Hey everyone, so in this video, I'm actually going to be going over a weapon idea that I had for S-Class Red Negan. So this Negan is the one that has the blocking Glock, where the third slot is, when attacking, 100% chance this character reduces reflected and counter damage to 0. So reflected and counter damage, we think of reflect weapons like Rosita's, or normal reflect weapons, reflect mods. We think of bide, we think of payback. Lightning reflexes is not considered a counter attack or counter damage because it will actually occur before Negan applies damage to the enemy. Now, in the last video that I made about Negan, I talked about how he can still trigger payback on other toons on your team. He won't take any damage, but your other characters on your team can, unless they have a guardian shield put up or some other way to block it. So this is the weapon that I was testing on my Negan beforehand. I thought it was pretty effective, increased basic attacks by 20% and ignore defense buffs. Just because of how his rush acts, I thought this weapon would be the most ideal choice because he actually hits for multiple attacks on his rush, which, as we know, are considered basic attacks. So that's why this type of craft is pretty useful on Negan. Now, this is the type of mod set that I'm going to use on Negan, just because it kind of works with him, increased attack, some extra HP, attack versus tough characters, just because there's still a lot of tough toons being used on defense, stun resist, because Negan using basic attacks on his rush means he could become stunned when he ends up attacking. I'm running attack up when impaired because I expect there to be blue toons on a lot of defensive teams, and if I rush Negan and he becomes impaired on the first attack, it means his second attack will attack at a higher degree because he is impaired and he will get this boost. An impaired toon can still rush if it's a continuation of a rush. Now, you might be curious as to what I want to craft on Negan's weapon that I think could be superior, or at least just a little bit different to the plus 20% attack boost and ignoring defense bonuses. And I guess it's a more careful weapon. Like, Negan is great because you can use him to trigger bide toons on purpose. So if you notice a bide toon is close to being at max damage, so near 2000, you could attack them with Negan on purpose, and that way the bide damage is released onto Negan, but he reduces that all the way down to 0. My main thing that I want to focus on is how with payback, there's a lot of issues that arise, mainly being you could be killing 2 of your other toons just because you chose Negan to rush a character. Sure, Negan won't die from the payback because he won't receive any of it, but the other characters on your team could. So right now with the weapon, I'm just trying to give it a huge bonus to AP on attack, as well as increasing the attack on Negan, just so that, when I 5-star it, at least it's not wasted. I don't get a perfect weapon out of this, but 38% I think is decent. This is also on the playtest account, so I'm a little less picky. So the options we have, so there are a lot of options for deciding on the 4th slot for Negan's weapon. Some people might say pain spread is a good option, slow attack because he does multiple attacks so he could slow the enemy, an increased amount because I do believe it stacks, cleanse so that he doesn't have any status effects on him, well at least he's able to remove status effects, alert buffs, which isn't bad except, if I'm using Negan on attack, I don't know how many alert toons I'm going to be using, but the craft that I'm focusing on is when attacking, a better chance for 2 teammates to get camouflage for a turn. And the reason why I'm thinking this could be a positive effect to gain on Negan is because of payback, specifically because of payback. So if I'm able to rush Negan, and let's say I kill someone on the first attack of his rush, well, I could end up getting camouflage on 2 of my teammates. I could also end up accidentally attacking a payback toon that isn't normalized because I killed that initial target. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of in a stuck situation where I could be blowing up 2 of my teammates, 2 of my toons. But if I have camouflage up, there's a chance that those toons will actually avoid it because when a toon is under the influence of camouflage, it means they can only take primary damage. And payback, if Negan's the one who's rushing, Negan would take the primary damage, but because of his special weapon, he will take 0 damage, and the other characters, if they have camouflage applied, will not take any damage. Now in this part of the video, I'm just showcasing how you can intentionally trigger different abilities. So I attacked Rosita with Negan, and we can see that the reflected damage from her weapon was brought down to 0. Now, I didn't end up getting the results that I wanted to showcase how camouflage works in this specific case, but now we're moving on to the second attack where I believe it will show up. Now, one of the downsides of camouflage on this specific weapon is that it's a 1-turn camouflage. It's also possible that the camouflage can be applied to self, which is less useful because Negan blocks basically all type of counter damage anyway, especially if he's the one who's attacking. So right here we notice he takes all the bide damage, brings it down to 0, he heals himself, and he applied camouflage to himself as well as Ivanova. We can see it activate when Priya rushes, and I'm not exactly sure what she triggered, but Negan didn't take any damage there. We can see that Dr. Stevens took some damage on that rush. I'm going to guess that it was an early proc of the camouflage because Negan took no damage when there was payback from Shiva, when he would have usually, because Priya was the one making or doing the attack. If Negan was the one doing the attack, he will never take that payback damage, unless his weapon is disarmed, of course. So upon testing camouflage on Negan's weapon, it's alright. I don't hate it. I don't think it's amazing, but I think that's just because I don't like Negan very much. I find Negan to be a very underwhelming character, and I just wish he did more. Like, he has a follow-up ability, but his rush doesn't really give him any AP like Arav does. He's not a heavy hitter like how Amber was back in the day. Basically, you can rush him, and then you can use his active skill, I guess. It's just a really weird combination of things. Like, the camouflage can be really useful in some cases, but as you saw just now, I saved 2 toons, basically. My whole team could have been wiped out, but I was able to stay up with 3 toons. I'm not counting Negan just because he blocks all type of counter damage, but it's just a little interesting to me. It's kind of hit or miss, so you could get lucky, I guess. So overall, with a video like this, I'm just trying to explain to you guys, I guess, and get you guys to think a little outside the box on what you could put on weapons that might be unorthodox but could be useful in specific circumstances. I think thinking differently is very important because you can come up with some really unique combinations that work in very specific situations or in very broad situations. And it's all about understanding the toon, its strengths and weaknesses, your team as a total, what the meta is, what the other person's team likely will be. There's just so many moving parts, and this is where I find a lot of my interests lie, with trying to figure out what works best or how something could work under a specific circumstance. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and listening to my video. I hope you guys found it to be informative.